Yo, what's going on, my buddies? TotalJophes coming at you with my review for World of Final Fantasy. So first of all, I just have to say, sorry that this review took so long to complete, guys. First off, World of Final Fantasy came out, obviously, and that is a really super long game, but then Skyrim came out right after that, the special edition, and I had to get that, and I had to play that, so that also ate a lot into it. And just, a lot of games keep coming out that I get, and I get distracted by playing some of those, but I finally managed to get my review for World of Final Fantasy out, and I've got to say, all in all, it's an amazing game for Final Fantasy fans and non-Final Fantasy fans, but it's got that extra little tidbit of nostalgia galore for Final Fantasy fans. But before I start just ranting about what the hell ever, let's get right into the review. Okay, so first off, for those of you who don't know how my reviews work, I will take 3 categories: story, graphics, and gameplay, give them each score out of 10, and then add them all together for the final score for the overall review of the game at the end. And first category that we're going to be going over today is the story. Now, with a Final Fantasy game, the story is 90% of the time the strong point of the game, because, you know, it's a JRPG, and JRPGs are supposed to have amazing stories. It's kind of what they're known for. And World of Final Fantasy definitely doesn't let us down with that. I mean, I will say this. I won't spoil the story at all, but I actually really did feel like it was a Final Fantasy game, you know? Like, it wasn't just your generic, you know, random RPG story. In fact, it was actually really unique. Like, the entirety of it was just so unique. You know, you don't have any of the staple RPG tropes. You know, you don't start off in, you know, some low, you know, poor villager town and, you know, anything like that. You don't have, you know, one single, you know, huge bad guy that's so evil and devastating. I mean, there is one bad guy that naturally is a little bit more bad than the others, but for the most part, it's kind of a group of bad guys. And you don't go through like a normal world. The world you go through, Grimoire, is so weird, but like delightfully weird. I mean, if you just go on the internet and just look up a map of Grimoire, I mean, the place is really freaking weird. Like, it's stylized in like layers. Like, there's, you know, there's a piece of Grimoire up here, then there's a piece of Grimoire down here, and then another piece of Grimoire over here, and another piece of Grimoire down here. It's really weird, but it's really cool. I love the uniquely designed aspects of the world. And on top of that, we've got the main characters, Rain and Lon, which they're twins. But I've just got to say, I love Rain and Lon so much. Like, I've got to say, the best part of this game, hands down, is just Rain and Lon. You know, it's just their interactions with each other, or with the world around them, or with other Final Fantasy characters and shit. I love every freaking piece of dialogue. I mean, it's very lighthearted and really wacky and humorous, but it's kind of amazing that way. I mean, the story definitely does get its serious and darker parts, of course, but a lot of it is really lighthearted and really, like I said, wacky and just hilarious, and it's amazing. I love it. It's definitely obviously geared towards a younger audience, but we kind of already knew that just from when the game was announced. And it does show, because like I said, the game is definitely lighter-hearted. But nonetheless, any player of any age can appreciate this game. It's not just like dinky little kid humor or something. It is actually just genuine humor for like all audiences. And it's freaking amazing. I love it so much. Like I said, the best part of this game is just Rain and Lon. I love those two so much. Like I said, their interactions with everything, they always have an amazing line to say about something, and that makes me so happy. Now, another really awesome part about the world and the story and the characters and whatnot is just the sheer amount of Final Fantasy nostalgia. I mean, case in point, one of the gameplay aspects, which I'll go over in depth more later, is that you basically, it's kind of like Pokemon, you know, you catch monsters, and once you catch them, they fight for you. Well, one of the monsters you catch is called Cerberus, right? And it makes a direct reference to Vincent Valentine from Final Fantasy VII, and that made me so happy because Vincent's my favorite character of all time. Like, if I remember correctly, it said something along the lines of, it shares the same name as the weapon of a certain Mr. Valentine, and I was like, ha! And there's so many points in this game where you're sitting there like, ha! Like where you catch the reference to a past Final Fantasy or something, and it's amazing. I love it so much. And not even Rain and Lawn, just the dialogue for like freaking everything is so awesome, and it's got so much nostalgia, and it's really funny. Another one of my favorite lines was, there's a part during the story, it's not exactly a spoiler saying that Cloud's in this. I mean, Cloud's in like every fucking thing that throws together all the Final Fantasies. Not that I don't like Cloud, I love Cloud as much as the next guy, but I'm just saying it's not surprising that he's in there. But anyway, there's a part of the story where Cloud hears about, a silver-haired swordsman with a long sword, and he goes off looking for him and whatnot. And, it doesn't pan out. He doesn't end up finding Sephiroth, but you get into a battle. And, again, this is one of my favorite lines. For those of you who don't know already, Sephiroth is indeed a character, but only in DLC. You get to summon him as a champion. I'll get into the gameplay aspect of what that is later, but you get to summon him as DLC, and I believe it's pre-order DLC. But anyway, you get into a battle after Cloud, almost finds Sephiroth but doesn't. And one of the characters is like, who knows, maybe we'll see this character one day in DL. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. And I'm just like, oh my god, like they break the fourth wall so much. And it's really hilarious when they do that. I love it so much. And like, I genuinely cannot fully get anyone to grasp, just with this review, how amazing the dialogue is in this game. I mean, the voice acting is pretty damn good, and just, like I said, the dialogue itself, like the actual lines, everything they say, makes this game so fun. Like, I can honestly say, if this game consisted entirely of just walking in a fucking straight line, say Final Fantasy 13, but there was all of the dialogue in the game playing the whole time, I would be perfectly entertained. It is that amazing. I love all of the characters and the dialogue that much. Now back to, the core concepts of the story. Again, I won't spoil anything, but, it does end up in a case where, the entire world gets threatened. Our heroes are the only ones that can stop it, that sort of thing. And it really does scream Final Fantasy inside and out. Now, before I go on too long, final score for the story is 8 out of 10. The reason why it's 8 out of 10 is because it is a good story. It is a great Final Fantasy story. But there are a few things that I will say, in the sense that the game tries to explain it. It's got a really complex story, but it can't quite explain it too well, There were a few things I was definitely still confused about by the time, I actually got to the end of the story. And I actually had to go look some things up, or, go and, replay through a few of the parts. More specifically, I save video from when I'm actually playing the game, so that's what I mean by replaying. But yeah, I had to go and recheck a few parts, look some things up. I wasn't still super clear on every last thing by the time I finished the game. And I definitely have to say that's a little bit of a weak point, because the story is so complex, it takes a little bit out of it when you don't quite understand everything. It does explain most of it pretty well, but there are a few things that you just kind of still can't really wrap your mind around, or at least I couldn't. That was just my experience. And this is coming from a veteran Final Fantasy fan. I'm usually fairly good at wrapping my head around the story of what's going on. But World of Final Fantasy, like I said, and one of the main problems with that is actually kind of like it explains things a little out of order, Like, it'll throw something in there, and it won't explain it till later, but then it'll explain something that just came in 2 seconds after it comes in. And it really explains it out of order, and sometimes it gets a little bit jumbled. But nonetheless, once you do understand it, it does have a really great story. So yeah, 8 out of 10. I love the story of that game. Alright, now we're going on to graphics. Now, I will say graphics is a little bit tricky of a thing to rate with this game, because it's not like it's going for like uber realistic graphics or anything. It is going for much more of a cartoony feel, naturally, considering that most of the Final Fantasy characters are like little chibi forms. But all the same, regardless, like the scenery and everything, and in their art style, in their choice of direction with all of the characters and whatnot, it is all really beautiful. Like, it is rendered very well, and I really love, like, some of the monster designs. Like, one of my favorite monster designs is, like, I don't know if any of you guys know what Fenrir is. Chances are veteran Final Fantasy fans know what Fenrir is. But there's this one monster that's kind of like a color swap version of Fenrir. I believe it was called, like, Elefenrir, I think it was called. But it's like this wicked black version of Fenrir with like dark fire on parts of it and shit. Really badass. Like, you wouldn't think that a game clearly aimed towards, you know, primarily younger audiences. I say primarily because anyone would enjoy it, but, you know, it does keep it more, you know, safe for younger audiences as well. But anyway, I wouldn't think that something that does try to keep the game safe for younger audiences would have monsters with such wicked-ass designs. Another one that I really loved was Behemonster, which is sort of like a level up from a behemoth, which, yes, you can still fight with. It's one of the monsters you can tame. But that's another monster that I really, really loved the design with. And then on top of that, the main characters themselves, they look like Final Fantasy characters, and I love that. I love that they look like they could come straight out of, like, any Final Fantasy. I mean, fucking Lon looks like Roxas from Kingdom Hearts. I found that kind of interesting, and I really loved it. And just all in all, on top of that, well, actually, I do have one small thing to say about the graphics that, you know, are and that's, you know, when you're fighting, you get a bunch of different abilities from all over the place, but, you know, the abilities, when you use them, they feel a little underpowered because they don't have really, really flashy animations. Some of them do, but most of them don't. You know, like, say, Thundaga, like, one of the most powerful lightning spells in Final Fantasy. Just a few thunderbolts, you know, nothing like all that crazy. I would have loved for there to be like a giant-ass one, maybe a minor explosion or something, you know, something like that. Some of the abilities, animations, felt a little, you know, and like they could have put a little bit more effort into it, but that hardly took out of the game in the slightest, you know? But yeah, I've definitely got to say, the overall look of the game is fantastic. Like, with the art style that they decided to go in, even with all the little chibi characters and everything, it is amazing. And I've got to say, like, it's very well represented. For any of you who may have pre-ordered the game, if you get the Sephiroth DLC, the Sephiroth DLC, when he does his animation for his attack, which is Supernova, that is really beautiful. Like, it is rendered very well. I mean, you can tell it's a PS4 game, you know? I don't actually know if it's on the Xbox One or not. I don't actually know. Let me know that in the comment section down below, because I have no idea. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that part with Supernova was super badass looking. Even with him going into the fire and everything, very, very, very well rendered. So overall, like I said, the art direction they chose works for it. All of the monsters have some really cool designs, and all of the characters always look really awesome. And I love seeing some Final Fantasy characters that we haven't gotten to see, you know, fully rendered, brought into this game. Like, say, Edgar from Final Fantasy VI. I've never seen him outside of Final Fantasy VI, so it's kind of cool to see him. I know it's chibi-fied, but, you know, I'll take what I can get. It's still kind of cool to see him in there, to actually hear him voice acted and whatnot, you know? And then there's, like, Ferris from Final Fantasy V. You know, she gets put in there. You actually get to see her, hear her voice acted, and it's really awesome for Final Fantasy fans that have never gotten to see that. You know, like, we've seen Cloud and everything. We've heard his voice. We know what he's like. But, you know, we don't know what, say, Charlotta from one of the Crystal Chronicles games. Probably nobody knew who the hell that was, but it was kind of cool to see her thrown in there. I mean, that was awesome. But anyway, overall, graphics for this game, 10 out of 10. See, whereas there is those minor little beefs I have with the move animations, I really can't say that took anything out of the game for me. And I loved the rest of the game visually. I loved the art style, I loved all of the character designs, I loved all of the monster designs, and it was so beautiful to see. Okay, now the final part of this review, and that is the gameplay itself. Now, for those of you who have played, say, Ni no Kuni, you're gonna see a lot of that in this game. And both World of Final Fantasy and Ni no Kuni kind of seem like they originally took, you know, inspiration from Pokemon. But yeah, the core concept of the game is, it's more RPG style, you know? You get into a battle and it's turn-based, and, you know, you have your basic attacks, you have your magic, you have your items, you can run away. But the main concept is that you capture monsters to do the fighting for you. Now, granted, Rain and Lon, the two main characters, are in every battle. They actually, fight as well, but the monsters fight with them. And you can fight in two ways. You can either have the monsters just out and about next to you, which is, never useful, in my opinion. I, never found any way where that was useful. If anybody else has found a way where it's useful to fight unstacked, leave it in the comment section down below, because I want to know. But usually you want to have them stacked on top of each other, which does sound really weird. And I'll admit, it's a really weird concept, but it's kind of adorable. And it's, I don't know, I actually kind of love the weirdness of it, that your main way of fighting is to have all your little monsters stacked on top of you. I don't know, it's kind of fun, honestly. But Rain and Lon each can bring two other monsters with them. And Rain and Lon can either fight in their small forms, called a Lilikin, or in their normal-sized forms, called a Giant, with a J. But if in their Lilikin forms, they are a medium size. There's 3 sizes, large, medium, and small. And in their Giant forms, they are a large size. Now, when you're in your large size, you can have a medium-sized monster on top of you, and a small-sized monster on top of that. All of the stacks go large, medium, small. And so naturally, because of that, when you're a Lilikin and you're a medium size, you get to stand on a large monster and have a small monster still on top of you. There's no way to make Rain and Lon any small, and I honestly kind of wish they had that, where you could make Rain and Lon, small size, maybe even more miniature Lilikin, because, there were some times where I really wanted to level up some monsters, and I had, 2 medium size and 2 large size that I wanted to level up, but, I can't make Rain and Lon small, so it didn't work that perfectly, but all in all, that really didn't matter too much. But yeah, that part of the battle system, it's delightfully weird, where you have small, medium, large, you have monsters stacked on top of you. And I don't know, I really like that. And each of the stacks is what they're called. The small, medium, and large stacked on top of each other. It's called a stack. And each of the stacks share the abilities of everything in there. So, whatever abilities Rain has, and say the medium and small monsters on top of her she has, that entire stack has all of those moves. And that entire stack takes the same turn. So, when it's your turn, one of your stacks takes a turn, the other stack takes a turn. So, fairly simple. The battle system's very simple, and they even have, shortcuts to where you can have the moves put in, so you can just click a button and use the move immediately. And so, they definitely do have it, really simplified, but what I found was really, really super useful and really, really welcoming is that you can click a button and open the menu with all of your stuff. You can use all of your abilities and attacks and items, and you can escape. I mean, you are required to use that menu to a certain degree because, you have to use that to escape. I think you have to use that to use items too. But all the same, they could have just put everything on that little shortcut menu. But I like having the ability to be able to go in and see all of my moves and shit and selectively choose which ones and whatnot. So, whereas the battles are simplified, they are also fully utilized. You can use everything you have at your arsenal with both your stacks in battle at any point in time. And I love that. Now, another thing that was kind of interesting about this game is in most RPGs you have HP and MP. Well, in this game you have HP and AP. AP is basically MP, but, it counts for, everything but physical attacking and using items. So, you have elemental magic, it takes AP. You have some sort of, super move you want to use, it takes AP. You have, say, a joint move, which I'll get into that later, but, called Cross Slash. Well, that takes AP. Basically, everything besides physically attacking and using items costs AP, but AP also regenerates every turn. One thing I'll say is that it doesn't regenerate super fast. You only get, a couple AP every turn, but, it's not too bad. And on top of that, it seems like the game is definitely really emphasized towards, physical attacking and not a whole lot more. You definitely have a shit ton of abilities to choose from, but most of them are primarily useful against fighting enemy stacks, which, they're primarily useful for knocking the stacks over. That's something you can do in the game, is you can knock stacks over, and vice versa, your stacks can get knocked over, and that causes some serious problems. But I didn't find that a lot of the abilities were very useful outside of exploiting elemental weakness or knocking stacks over. If there's something you're fighting that doesn't have any elemental weaknesses and isn't in a stack, you're not really going to be doing a whole lot more than physical attacking or using, like, offensive items. And I kind of thought that was a little, you know, It wasn't great. I kind of wish that abilities were a little bit more useful. On top of that, my only other bitch that I can think of off the top of my head, at least, is it's really, really hard to get money in this game. Like, it gets easier as the game goes on, but you're never, like, in a really big surplus of money where you can just buy a shit ton of items. Like, in every other Final Fantasy game I've played, there comes a point where I can stock up on 99 potions, 99 X potions, 99 Phoenix Downs, shit like that. You do that in World of Final Fantasy, you're fucking broke. You're never gonna be that much in a surplus of cash, especially since, you know, healing moves are a little bit harder to come by in this game, so you're gonna be using a lot of items. Which is fine, because you usually can't afford them, you just can't afford, like, a surplus of them. And that's something I kind of felt was a little bit limiting, you know, because, on top of that, one of the ways that you train up your monsters is by giving them what's called seeds. And seeds, essentially, long story short, they teach them a move. So, you know, you can give them a cure seed and it teaches them cure, or you can give them a fire seed and it teaches them fire. But seeds are really fucking expensive. And I kind of felt that that was a little bit, you know, that felt a little bit limiting, you know? I wanted to be able to get the seeds that I wanted, but they costed an arm and a fucking leg, and you don't make money very fast, so it was really hard to get that. Now, granted, I obviously don't expect them to, you know, say this game comes out with a sequel or something. I don't expect them to make it so that you can just buy every seed whenever you want, but, you know, I would have liked to be able to buy a few more here and there, so I really would have loved money to be more easily accessible, you know? On top of that, I have a few other beefs with this game's gameplay. Throughout the game, you get to explore dungeons, you get to explore towns. The towns really aren't very big, they usually consist of just 2 zones, and there's not a whole lot to do in them. So I really would have liked there to be a bit more to do in towns. Like, you could take side quests, and the side quests are fairly simple, like fetch quests or kill quests, more often than not. But all the same, I really would have liked a little bit more in the towns, you know? I would have liked a little bit more to do. And then the dungeons, whereas all of them are fairly cool looking, they all have really unique designs to them, a lot of them felt really monotonous. Like, you go through one dungeon, and you've practically gone through them all. Granted, there are a few that are a little bit different, but they really don't feel that different other than just visually. Like, they all look different, but they just don't feel different, you know? It's all the same, running through the dungeon, grabbing the chest, getting into a battle, you know, that sort of stuff. And I would have liked a little bit more, like, maybe just story or something to break up the monotony of that. But there's plenty of times where I'm just trekking through a dungeon, doing nothing but just fighting monsters and shit, and it got a little bit boring at times, I will admit. On top of that, the combat system, like I said, when you're not fighting something that has an elemental weakness, or say you don't have access to that element, or when you're not fighting something when you're not fighting something that's stacked, you really don't have a lot of use for your abilities. So there's a lot of times where you're just sitting there physically attacking over and over again. And then you go through the dungeon a little bit more, and you get into a battle, and you just physically attack until you win. And it, like I said, it definitely got a little bit monotonous sometimes, and a little bit tedious. But there wasn't that many times I felt like that, to be fair. So, all in all, this game has got some really unique, really in-depth, and really thinking outside-the-box gameplay to it. But I will say that there are also plenty of times where it gets a little bit old, it gets a little bit monotonous, and a little bit tedious. So all in all, the gameplay gets a 7 out of 10, because I really did have fun with it, but it did get a little bit tedious at times. Okay, so this review has been a long one, and as you can probably tell, I've got a lot to think about with this game, and that's why. And overall, this game really is just really big. Like, it's got a lot of gameplay hours to it. It's taken me over 40 hours just to beat the story. I haven't really done a whole lot outside of that, to be perfectly honest. Like, I haven't gone out of my way to go collecting a shit ton of monsters. I haven't gone out of my way to go finish all the side quests or anything. It's mainly just been the story that I've been doing, and that alone has taken me over 40 hours. So, yeah, there's a lot in this game, and overall, I really did like it. Final score for the game is 25 out of 30. Now, like I said, I do have a few beefs with this game, but overall, I had a lot of fun. And as a Final Fantasy fan, the nostalgia in this game, and, you know, the callbacks to all of the Final Fantasies, it was really fun. But at the same time, it's a great standalone Final Fantasy game. It's got a great original story with great original characters and original gameplay elements. So, all in all, definitely loved the game. I definitely suggest that you guys go and check it out. It was super fun. So what do you guys think about this game? I'm sure a lot of you have had time to play it if you have played it by now. And if not, did this review help you decide whether or not you want to play it? Definitely leave all that in the comment section down below. Definitely leave a like on this video. And of course, subscribe for future videos, because I'll be uploading multiple videos every week as usual. So, that'll be about it. So until next time, stay pretty, my buddies.